Good morning, everyone. How we doing? All right, our wonderful techno-optimists here. I don't know how many people were here or participated yesterday on the AI panel, and there was a lot of doom and gloom, and when I took a straw poll, the vast majority of you thought that AI would help us rather than kill us, which means that you guys are awesomely optimistic. But also, I think I agree with you. But today, we're not going to talk about AI necessarily, but we're going to talk about it in a broader context. And the title of the presentation is, or the panel is, Transforming Society, the Role of Impactful Technology in a Brighter Future, which is very, very general. So I'm going to be calling up an amazing panel of leaders and titans in the design industry, in the product industry, coming from some great firms who work at the intersection of design, technology, and business. So first of all, I'd like to call on stage Jennifer Weng, Design Director and Head of Ventures North America at Frog. Come on up. Then Jenna Fizel, Managing Director, Emerging Technology at IDEO. I never thought I'd see host a panel with IDEO and Frog next to each other, but this is amazing. And then last but definitely not least, best-selling author and Global VP of Hachette and HTC, Mr. Alvin Graylin. So welcome everyone. How we all doing? Mic check. We're all good? Uh-huh. Mic's on? You're very welcome. Now everyone knows who you are. But what I'd like to do is give an opportunity for our panelists to introduce themselves. So Jenna, why don't we start with you?
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna. I lead IDEO's emerging technology practice. I am by training both a designer and a software engineer. And I've worked across a bunch of different emerging technologies, from machine learning to spatial computing to digital fabrication. And I really see both technology and human needs as part of what makes for compelling design. And I'm excited to talk about that with this panel.
Thanks, Jenna. Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. Oh, okay, we're on. We're good, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. I'm actually a native Vancouverite, but I moved to New York 10 years ago, so I've come back to visit family since. But it's so nice to be back here and part of this community here and being in the North Shores. It's been a while. It's beautiful. So thanks for having me. I'm a design director and head of ventures at Frog. So a lot of what I do and I'm passionate about is humanizing technology and bringing good and impactful user experiences to the world in the form of technology and products that are going to improve our lives as well as the planet. So,
great. Thanks. Alvin?
Hi, I'm Alvin. I'm actually drove from Seattle, but I was born in China. I've been working in the kind of tech space for 35 years. I've been studying AI and XR and semiconductors since then, and worked for IBM, Intel, and now HTC. And in between, I also founded 4 different venture-backed startups and made the first conversational search engine in China in 2005. So we were doing what ChatGPT is doing today 20 years ago. So, and I look forward to meeting all of you and chatting. And recently wrote this book. If you guys want to know what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years with AI and XR, it gives you a little picture of it.
If I speak loudly, can you? All right, thank you, Alvin. No, I don't have to speak so loudly. So why don't we kick it off? We're talking about emerging technologies, and when we talk about emerging technologies, whether you call it hard tech, frontier collective, etc., AI, XR, these new technologies that are emerging that have a tremendous potential impact on society, on business, on commerce, on politics. When we think about this, and when we think about the track record of Silicon Valley, and you know, you guys come from firms that have designed some of the most iconic products for some of the leading companies, and HTC is a design leader in its own right. And one of the things that I'm struck with is the the human-centric nature of design that are products that come out of your respective companies. But I might say, in these new emerging technologies, do you believe that these new emerging technologies are also following a human-centric design, or is it sort of more like the Silicon Valley, let's solve a problem and who cares about the user as a human? Who wants to go first? What?
Probably more the latter, I would say, but it's not so much that like who cares about the user. I think it's more the user comes later. And I think that's in the work that I do and that I've seen, that's still okay, so long as at some point you engage in that. And so a lot of the work that I do, I work with startups and deep tech organizations, and so it's now our technology is almost ready. How do I bring this to market? What should I do with it? How is someone going to engage with it? And I think kind of bringing in the human-centered design at the right point is still a great option. And it's important because we want to be building purposefully, and I think a lot of times we were talking about earlier, the missing key piece is with empathy. And so kind of you're not just creating products and putting it into the world, but it's designed for a purpose, for a human, with consideration of their full context in terms of not just their needs and their current pain points, but also kind of the context and environment, their feelings, who's going to be around them. And so for a certain product might be who's going to use it, but who's going to service it, who's going to buy it, and these are different things that often we miss.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and I think we see a lot of actually like pretty widespread evidence of this. We're now kind of semi-panicked that AI is a bubble and it's going to crash, and we heard yesterday about how like, oh, if you can't get your agents to be more than 75% accurate, you can't pick up grandpa. And like that's probably true, but I think a big reason why we're perhaps not seeing the product market fit that we expected is because we didn't think through the design holistically. And I think human-centered design is about humans, but when I draw the bubbles on the slide talking about what is design, it isn't just desirability, right? Desirability is an important input into a design practice, and it's an important inspirational input. It's not about asking a user, do they want this box 3 pixels to the left or right? It's about understanding something deeply about them and using that to inspire a solution that will actually be impactful. And you need to put the same consideration against both your technology and how you're making value in order to come up with a truly great and viable design for the long term. And so I think that holistic approach has been, to a certain degree, missing in this rush that we're in to get things out and get things to market, which, while important, can leave you feeling a little hollow and maybe a little bubbly.
What's the ramification of not putting the human at the center for the design of the products and services? What's the potential downside? What's the potential dark side?
So when when I was talking, I'm going to try and play the more contrarian view to some of these discussions. But I guess first let me kind of address what I just heard from Jenna and Jen. And I actually think it's maybe for some of the prior technologies we've been working with, it's not as been human-centric, but where we are headed, it actually will become increasingly more human-centric. And I'll give you an example. So the first thing that Armando said was put your phone down, because he knows that if you're looking at your phone, you're not looking at him. But we are now getting to a time where we will have glasses that are like this, that will have displays on them, might have cameras, and allow you to still have your eyes focus on the person you're talking to, but have information that will help augment your conversations. Right? So these kind of devices will actually, even though they will be on our face most of the day, they actually will make us more present because we will be able to see and be attentive to the environment that we are in. If you look at what AI chatbots are doing today, you are now able to use voice as your conversation. Right? Before, to do what you had to do, you would go onto Google or to whatever search site or go to the library and type something, and then you wait for a list to come out, and then now you can actually just talk to this new AIs, right? The whole voice mode thing. you can have a long, deep conversation with it about just about anything, and it feels like your friend. I don't think there's anything not human about that. Even though it's being generated, the experience feels very connected to another person, because they even make the little intonations that you would hear from a human person when you have that conversation. Now, there is a dark side, because I think because it's so accessible, because it is so natural, it can also be misused, right? Because if the AI is talking to you, but it's trying to sell you something, it will be able to manipulate you to do just about anything it wants you to, or the advertiser is paying it to do, because it will know more about you than you know yourself or your spouse knows about you, right? And it will be able to, push all of your buttons in the way that it knows it will get the reaction it wants. And it will be able to display the information that it wants at the right time to make you to vote for something, to buy something, to go somewhere, right? So it takes away some of our agency. So it's important, how does who has the control of this AI? That's really, really important, as well as who has control of the platform that's displaying the information to you.
So, I mean, this is a really interesting sort of use case. Is we all remember sort of glass holes, the Google Glass people, and now we have Ray-Ban from Meta, et cetera. And it is true, absolutely, Alvin, that the form factors are getting so much more, every day and almost invisible. Yet at the same time, going back to that quote from the session with Gary Marcus, which is, just because you can do it, should you do it? How does the role of design come into, let's say, a device that could video every single, interaction that you have, and what does that do to the public space and other people? How does, having a human-centric design kind of take that into account and potentially mitigate these downstream negative consequences?
Yeah, I think I'll share a quote from one of IDEO's founders, Bill Moggridge, which is, "The only way to experience an experience is to experience it." And I find this to be really true. So Alvin, to your sort of musing about what happens when maybe somebody else is in control of your AI, we're internally to ourselves running some experiments on what does it feel like to be controlled or censored by these tools. So one of these is a Slack bot, and a few of us got to try to improve our personalities. So I'm actually finding myself being more optimistic lately, but sort of, I can be a little bit sort of depressing or harsh on Slack. So my self-editor or, AI editor will rewrite any of my Slack messages on several of our channels to be very positive, like really uncomfortably positive, which means that I have to phrase my words if I'd like them to get through to other people in a more positive way, else I risk being rewritten. This is a very interesting feeling because it actually erases my words and replaces them. My original sentences are gone.
Wait, sorry. So like when you hit send, what you type just turns into the optimistic version?
Correct.
Interesting.
You don't get to review it.
You get to review it? Oh.
No review. It just happens. Yes. Because I think it is important to think about what does it mean to have an online identity, right? We're already curating, we're already, maybe reviewing what we post before we post it. Maybe it's going out into the world and getting churned up by others and recontextualized. So what does it mean to do that to ourselves? And what might it mean to have that done to you? Haven't gone quite that far yet, but I think that is perhaps a natural next step, is to let other people edit my personality on the internet. We'll see if I do it or not. But the reason why I think this is important for design is because now I and some of my colleagues have the emotional experience of being changed. And that, I hope, will make us more empathetic and better designers of experiences that might impact people, obviously not in this way, but in related ways. When we think about agents, when we think about other representations of maybe like a group mediator or something, what does it mean to have your self, your personality, kind of put through the meat grinder of an AI tool. It doesn't necessarily feel bad.
That is such an interesting social experiment and so IDEO. I love it. I guess to dovetail off of that, one of the also founder quotes that we use a lot is people don't buy products, they buy value in the form of experiences and emotions. And I think that goes hand in hand where kind of we need to be thinking about the value of what we're putting out into the world and what are people's experiences and emotions that go into that. And that should kind of shape what we're designing.
Well, yeah, and that is a fascinating social experiment. I don't know if I like it, but I can totally relate to the sense of having your words changed, and to a certain extent that there are certain companies that Alvin, you've worked in certain companies that have very distinct cultures, like Intel and various other companies that have very, very specific cultures, and for people who've worked in certain companies with very strong cultures, there's a way to communicate and everything. And so if you're going to, could you do a filter where we're going to write it in like Microsoft Ease or Google Speak or whatnot, and then what does that do to sort of your own personal agency and your own voice, right? But here's the sort of dark side is what if we all choose to surrender our words to this awesome chatbot, and then we lose the ability to speak authentically or in our own voices, and it kind of sees us hurtling towards this Aldous Huxley sort of Brave New World sort of thing where everyone's hopped up on Soma, or not hopped up, but sedated on Soma, or controlled by this agent, which is like, we're going to maintain harmony and take away your voice. I mean, that sounds kind of Dark Mirror-ish to me.
That's already happening with Zoom. I think last week they just announced that now you can make a version of yourself that goes on Zoom and participates in meetings and speaks for you. So you don't even have to go to meetings anymore.
How do I get this feature?
And then it'll take notes and come back and write you a note of what the meeting was. So it'll just be, everybody will send their agents, and the agents will talk to each other, and then they'll just come back and send you a note. I feel like that may be going too far, right? And so back to your original question of when we have devices that are actually observing everything, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And if we lose our privacy, what does that mean? The reality is that in most of our lives today, we actually don't have the privacy already that we think we do. Right? Your phone is always listening to you, and somebody's capturing. I would talk about something, and the next day I see ads about it, and somebody, whether it's Amazon or Google or something, they're listening to you. Right? If you're out there anywhere in public, there's cameras everywhere in the city, and you're being filmed. There's so much. Everything that you're doing online is being tracked. So you really don't have privacy. Now the question is, today, all that loss of privacy is being used by advertisers to try to get you to buy something or to control you or to monitor you. What we need to do is to say, okay, I'm going to give up my privacy, but I'm going to give it up to this AI agent that is on my phone, that resides with me, and is on my behalf taking that data because it knows me, right? And when I have like the camera or the phone or the glasses I just showed you had cameras, has mics, it actually can hear every conversation I have, it can see everything I'm seeing, and if that data goes into a database that says, okay, this is what Alvin's like, this is what he likes, this is what he enjoys, this is his hobbies, and then using that to say, oh, maybe you should sleep more today you had a really rough day, or maybe you need to go exercise, it's been 3 days since you worked out, right? And using that information to make me a better version of myself, I actually think that's a great loss of privacy when it's to my own agent.
That AI agent concept you just outlined sounds an awful lot, a lot like my parenting duties. You need more sleep, you should do more things to become a better person, blah, blah, blah. And then if I were to extrapolate that, my children never listen to me. So do you think that in a future system where we have sort of our better angels in our ears and our eyes and knows us, that we're actually going to listen to it?
So we did an experiment on this. 2 years ago, we had an experiment. We had a bunch of kids between 9 and 12. We did a month where they came in and they put on the headset, one of these things, and they spent an hour a day with these AI agents. So they were different animals, rabbits and elephants and whatever, and they would talk to them, and these agents would say, oh, you need to go listen to your parents more, you need to clean your room, you need to be more responsible. And we didn't tell the parents what we were doing with these experiments, but at the end of the month, we did a survey, and we said, okay, how was the behaviors in these areas? And it was like 70% increase in all the behaviors that the AI agents were asking them to do. At the time, we actually had human researchers in another room pretending to be these animals, but they thought it was AI, animals that they were talking to. So they will listen to a friend. They see it as a friend more than a authority figure.
Take my money, please.
I think it might just be because it's coming from the parents, and we need to speak through these AI friends, then, is the solution?
Yes.
I think a semi-relevant story, and it was actually a startup that I worked with, actually in cancer patient care. The organization, or the startup was a spin-off of, they were already in the oncology field. They had the infrastructure and the technology to what they wanted to do was provide good quality cancer patient care to those who were not in big city hubs and who didn't have access and couldn't go. And then so we looked at the cancer patient journey, and it was a lot of when you get your diagnosis, you go into your appointments with the doctors, but there's all that period in between that they're sort of by themselves. And so it was also to fill that void and the need. And so they came to us with kind of an idea of what they wanted to build, but what was good was that we got to go in and do kind of deep understanding and user research, going into cancer patients' homes, talking to their families and their caretakers, and really understand kind of, was this something that would be helpful and impactful to them, but also like the desirability, but then also kind of giving us an understanding of that empathy that's needed from a product or an app into their homes. And what we actually found, which was very interesting, kind of with all this technology available to them in their hands, was they actually just wanted someone who's been through what they've been through to talk through. And so kind of understanding the need from that kind of was born the concept and eventually a feature that was peer mentors. So think like an AA sponsor, but for cancer. And so someone who can talk to you about the type that you've that you're going through, how to talk to your kids about it, and sort of it had an component that was also that had like mental therapists, but people just wanted to talk to normal people and have that connection. And so I think kind of with that is technology can be available to us, they can be on us, it can be around us, but I think humans kind of still gravitate towards related experiences within other humans.
So that's a really good example. I mean, Jenna, what do you think about the bigger problem? Is it that AI empathizes with us? Is that the bigger problem, or is it that the human needing to empathize with AI? So for example, another human being saying, look, I've been through this, or my mother's been through this, and they'll give comfort to someone going through that experience, versus a bot that says, I have systematically looked at 760,000 cases, and I can tell you with 74, I'm exaggerating. But is it that, do you find humans are more trusting of AI, or is it that the fact that AI needs to understand the human condition?
That's a really great question, and I think that this is one of the places where generative AI, large language models in particular, have a much different stance in relation to humans. So, for example, you might have heard the statistics touted by OpenAI about how well various versions of ChatGPT score on like the MCATs or other sort of technical tests. But actually where they, on average, outshine doctors is on empathy and bedside manner. And there's this very interesting opportunity to create in some way authentic relationships between people and these technological systems. And I think it's not just AI. This is actually also a strength of kind of all kinds of sensory immersive technologies. You can, in a lot of ways, not just relate to your user, but become part of their identity. You might be familiar, to harken back a little bit to yesterday and theories of consciousness, the Extended Mind paper by Clark and Chalmers from the 90s. Pre-smartphone, pre-sort of any kind of wearable technology was really available to the public. They created a thought experiment about two people going to a museum, and one person remembered where the museum was and went to it, and the other person wrote down the location of the museum in a notebook because they had some cognitive decline, and then later took out their notebook, read the address of the museum, and also went to the museum. And the idea here is to kind of break the tyranny of the skin. So it isn't just your physical body that is you. It is any system that you can access with very little friction at all times, in some way becomes part of your self-conception. And I don't know about you, but I did not put my phone under my chair. I did silence all of its notifications, so I knew it wasn't going to bother me. But I was not comfortable having it leave my pocket because my phone is a little bit part of me. And I think as these technologies become more integrated into our sensoriums and into our daily lives, there's a real question for me as to whether we're designing people friends, confidants, salesmen, what have you, or if we are designing extensions of yourself, which really changes the game on what does privacy look and feel like. What does augmented intelligence actually look and feel like? And then when is it appropriate to make something that's relational? And I'll segue a little bit. One thing I'm really interested there is interactions with groups. So what does group identity look like? What does it look like to create a shared virtual space? What does it look like to create sort of the avatar or the genius loci of a place? I think these are things we can actually start to consider and to build today.
So actually, one thing that a lot of people don't realize was the first AI application was a therapist. It's called Eliza back in the 50s. So the fact that even when we had the most basic AI, it was able to create something that created ability for humans to interact. And when people talk to this 70-year-old Eliza, a lot of them forgot they were talking to a computer. Right? So this is not today's ChatGPT. This is like a very basic rule thing where it repeats what you say and do some very simple things. But so for humans to feel connected, it doesn't take that much. And today's technology is just leaps and bounds above that. So we actually I think there was a study that showed patients were more appreciative of the feedback from the AI diagnosis than the real doctors, because real doctors are so busy, they give you 2 minutes and they just say something and then they leave. Whereas the AI can stay there as long as you want, explain everything, be always available, and that's something that we don't appreciate enough about what these technology can do. It actually can do a lot of services to help the mental health aspect of what we will soon be dealing with, or we are already dealing with as a society.
It seems like you're coming around to the optimistic side again.
Oh, I'm in my book, I play the optimist. So I'm going against my nature. So to make it more interesting for the audience.
So I don't know if anyone's seen that show, awful show that's so addictive, Love is Blind. So I guarantee you at some point they're going to put in an AI, and I'll bet you a lot of people will fall in love with the AI. Right, so in any case, but that's a segue. We've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. If anyone's got a question, raise your hand and just let us know, first, if you're a designer or a user, if that makes any sense. Are there any questions from the audience?
Hi. Hello. Okay. So I'm curious on, I guess, just an open question for the group. As a parent, and we talked about our kids, and you were talking about the experiments done on children on just understanding their relationship with the AI companions. As a parent, I'm increasingly more terrified, I guess, of the relationship that my child has with his device and his phone and the technology developing right now. What are your thoughts on, or what are your thoughts and what's your advice for designers as we think about our children and our generation interacting with phones?
Next month, I'm actually going to go to Prague and speak to 4,000 children about how AI is going to affect their lives. I've been thinking about this for a while, and actually I think we need to have them embrace it, but to understand the limitations of where the technology is and how to use it. But if they don't use it, which is a lot of what parents are saying, you can't use this, or or in schools you're not able to use this for classes. I think that's a disservice to them, because they are growing up in a world where it will be a ability for them to add 50 to 100 IQ points to themselves. If they don't have it and everybody else is using it, they will be essentially disabled compared to everybody, right? Now, the key is, how do you use it to learn? How do you use it to better yourself, not how do you use it to replace your own agency? And to be able to teach them more about not the facts, not about the hows, but the whys and the shoulds, right? To understand, to have them more use it as a way to have discussions, to be a tutor for them, to be a mentor, versus to be just an answer giver.
And mine are only 4 and a year and 10 months, so I'm a little bit away from worrying about that. But even the little one is so good. She can take any one of our phones, and we've got Android and iOS at home, and she knows which is the music player, which song from the thumbnails that she wants to play, which is really scary because she's 1. But I think as she grows up, I agree with you. It's avoidable. It's part of us. They see the parents with it. But I think for me, it's about teaching the next generation how to consciously use the technology that's available to them. And they're smart enough also. They're way smarter than I feel like I was at that age. And so we can teach them to live with it and to kind of use it to augment their development rather than kind of hindering it, is my personal perspective that I think.
So I'm not a parent, but I do think that young people especially have the opportunity to really push the boundaries on what's possible. We talk a lot about how, like, oh, we'll use technology to automate, we'll use technology to take away the things that are uninteresting to us. But I think where the real interesting things lie is in what we can do together. It's not about defending some idea of what humans are good at versus what technology is good at, but what does that collaboration look like? And I think that when you're younger, you have fewer preconceptions about what is your role and what are the roles of others. And I think that serves us just as well for societal change between, what social roles for different types of people ought to be, and what roles for technology and humanity ought to be as well.
Yeah, I think these are wonderful points. That as a concerned parent, my son, when he was in grade 9, wrote an essay, and I said, hey, let's take a look at the essay. And I read it, and I'm like, there's no freaking way that he wrote this. So I said, oh, hey, what does this word mendacious mean? And he's like, what? Mendacious, he goes, I don't know why, because it's in your opening paragraph. And I'm like, you used ChatGPT, didn't you? And he's like, yeah. I go like, bruh, because that's what they call each other. Bruh, I find that insulting. You know what I do for a living, man. So, but the thing is, I think to your, this is the commons, right? And especially during COVID, the kids were not able to play and interact, and that had a massive effect. And I just think back to myself when I was his age. I had a crappy Battlestar Galactica game which had a joystick that moved left and right and one button and little red dots. And I played that sucker for hours. You couldn't get it out of my hand. Just that. If I had the choice that the kids have now, I'd never come out of my room. So I think it's a bit normal, but it is fascinating to hear these use cases.
And I think one thing to add is I really I think kind of nod back to Catherine's segment yesterday on storytelling. It's also around the narratives that we create now on the products and the technologies that come out and what they're meant